Hey everyone, welcome back. You ever get that feeling on, you're wrestling with your code because your tests just won't behave?
Oh, yeah,
Especially those that rely on time. Yeah, it can get really
for
frustrating.
sure.
Well, today we're diving deep on a solution that just might save you some sanity. We're talking about java.util.Clock.
Okay.
We're looking at a 2024 article by Tomer Ben David.
Oh,
And
right.
let me tell you, this is good stuff. Time-based tests.
They can be a real nightmare. I mean, they pass 1 minute, they fail the next,
Right.
all because of these, tiny, uncontrollable fluctuations in the system time.
Yeah,
It's enough to make you want to just give up.
I hear that. So what makes this java.util.Clock so special?
Well, it's deceptively simple.
Okay.
You can think of it as sort of like an extra layer between your code and the actual system clock.
Hmm.
You can then swap out what kind of clock your code uses,
Okay.
especially during testing.
I'm intrigued, but I'm sure some of our listeners might not be super familiar with Java.
Right.
Could you maybe break down how this actually works?
Sure. So let's just say you have a method in your code, and it's supposed to perform an action at a certain time of day,
Okay.
like sending a notification or updating a database record.
Right.
Normally, your code would just directly ask the system, hey, what time is it? Using something like local.date.now.
Mm-hmm.
But with java.util.clock, you introduce this middleman.
So instead of my code being tied to the real-time clock,
Right.
it's getting the time information from this clock thing.
Exactly. And the best part is Java provides you with all these different implementations of clock.
Okay.
In production, you'd use clock.system, which behaves just like the normal system clock.
Yeah.
But during testing, you can swap it out for clock.fixed.
Hmm.
This lets you freeze time at a specific moment.
Hold on. Yeah, that's genius.
It's like hitting the pause button on the world.
So I could set up a test where it's always, let's say, 6 p.m., no matter what the real time is.
Precisely.
That would solve so many problems.
Right. And there's another one.
All right.
It's called clock.offset, which lets you shift time forward or backward by a specific duration.
Okay.
Think that simulating timeouts delays or even
Oh, wow.
time travel scenarios.
The possibilities. But let's make this a little more concrete.
Okay.
Comer had a code example in his article, right?
He did.
What was it?
It was a class called MyClass with this really simple method called eyes and nighttime.
Oh,
This method just checks if the current time is past 5 p.m.
okay.
Without clock testing, this would be a nightmare
Yeah, I could imagine.
because your tests could fail just because they happen to run a few seconds before 5 p.m.
Ugh, I can feel the frustration already.
Yeah.
So how did he use clock to fix this?
Well, remember dependency injection.
Yes.
Instead of MyClass directly fetching the time it receives a clock instance when it's created,
Okay.
in a real-world scenario, you'd give it the clock.system,
Right.
but in tests, you inject clock.fixed, set to, say, 6 p.m.
Uh-huh.
Now is it nighttime, always sees it as nighttime, making your test rock solid.
Okay, I'm starting to see the magic here.
Yeah.
So we've gone from potentially flaky time checks to a very predictable, controlled environment for our tests.
Exactly.
But can you give me the so what?
Sure.
Why should our listeners care about this beyond just, fixing a few tests?
Yeah, that's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reliable tests are like the bedrock of good software.
Okay.
Think about it. When your tests are stable and predictable,
Yeah.
your whole development process becomes smoother.
Okay, I'm listening. Help me connect the dots here.
All right, let's start with the obvious. No more chasing down those flaky test failures that just make you question your sanity.
Oh.
That alone frees up so much mental energy and time.
Oh, I've been there. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, except the needle keeps moving.
Exactly, but it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
Stable tests are crucial for those continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline.
Right.
These automated systems rely on consistent test results
Okay.
to make sure that new code changes don't break existing functionality.
Yeah.
Flaky tests can just throw a wrench into that whole process,
Makes sense.
causing delays and frustration for everyone.
If your tests aren't reliable, you can't really trust your automated deployments,
Right.
and that just slows down the entire team.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of technical debt.
Hmm.
When you have those flaky tests, you tend to lose trust in them.
Yeah.
You might start ignoring failures or even worse, disabling tests altogether.
Oh, yeah.
This creates this hidden danger in your code base where bugs can just creep in unnoticed.
So by using java.util.Clock to create these rock-solid time-based tests,
Right.
we're not just making life easier for ourselves, but we're also building a more robust and maintainable code base for the future.
Absolutely.
That's a win-win.
It really is. It's about shifting your mindset from just getting the tests to pass to creating a truly reliable safety net for your code.
Something that struck me in Tomer's article was how he talked about java.util.Clock actually saving his sanity.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds a bit dramatic, but I get it.
Oh, for sure.
Those frustrating, inconsistent tests can really take a toll.
Absolutely. I've been there myself.
Yeah,
When you're constantly battling with flaky tests, it can really erode your confidence and make you question your abilities as a developer.
for sure.
It's a recipe for burnout.
So by bringing java.util.Clock into our testing toolkit,
Yeah.
we're not just improving our code, but we're also taking care of our mental well-being.
Exactly.
I like the sound of that.
It's about creating a more positive and sustainable development experience.
Yeah,
Honestly, when you have that peace of mind, you can focus on the fun part,
right.
solving interesting problems and building awesome software.
You know something I was thinking about?
Yeah.
Is this just a Java-specific thing?
Hmm.
Or is this concept of controlling time for testing applicable in other languages?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
While the specific implementations might differ, the underlying principle is super valuable across the board.
okay.
Many languages and frameworks have ways to mock or manipulate time during tests.
So even if our listeners aren't Java experts, they can still apply these ideas to their own testing workflows.
Oh, absolutely. It's about thinking outside the clock.
Exactly.
The key takeaway is to recognize the importance of controlling time in your tests and then finding the right tools
Right.
for your language and your environment.
Tomer's article focused on java.util.Clock for time-based testing.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, are there other scenarios where this concept could be useful?
There are. For instance, think about situations where you need to test code that handles timeouts
Okay.
or implements scheduling mechanisms.
Right.
By manipulating time, you can simulate different scenarios and ensure your code behaves as expected.
Interesting. What about testing code that interacts with external services,
Yeah,
which return time-sensitive data?
that's another great example.
Okay.
With java.util.Clock, you can control the timestamps returned by those services in your tests,
Mm-hmm.
giving you more control over the testing environment.
It seems like the possibilities are endless. We've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything out about java.util.Clock that our listeners should explore further?
Well, we've mostly focused on those fixed and offset clocks,
Right.
but there's also clock.tick, which, it lets you simulate time advancing in a very controlled way.
Okay.
It's really great for testing scenarios that involve like periodic tasks or time-sensitive calculations.
So like fast forwarding, but with more control?
Exactly.
I can see that being helpful for testing things like caching mechanisms
Yeah,
or rate limiters where you want to make sure that actions happen at the right intervals.
absolutely. The more I work with this java.util.Clock, the more I appreciate its versatility.
Yeah.
It's such a simple concept,
Right.
but it has like a profound impact on how you approach testing.
It's a great example of how sometimes the smallest tools can make the biggest difference.
For sure.
It reminds me of that saying, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world.
Okay.
Maybe a bit dramatic, but you get the idea.
I like the analogy. Java.util.Clock is like that lever,
Yeah.
giving you the power to move those stubborn time-based testing problems out of the way.
So to wrap things up for our listeners,
Okay.
what's the one key takeaway you want them to walk away with today?
Well, if you're working with any time-based logic in Java,
Yeah.
do yourself a favor and embrace this java.util.Clock.
Okay.
It's a game changer for writing reliable, maintainable, and dare I say, enjoyable tests.
I love it.
It really can be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's like having a secret weapon in your testing arsenal.
That's right.
And hey, maybe you'll even save your sanity along the way,
I hope so.
like I did for Tomer.
That's the goal.
All right, and that's a wrap for today's deep dive into java.util.Clock.
Great episode.
Big thanks to Tomer Ben David for his fantastic article that really sparked this conversation. We'll be sure to link to it in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. Well, we've mostly focused on those fixed and offset clocks, but there's also clock.tick,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
which lets you simulate time advancing in a very controlled way.
Yeah, it's perfect for like testing scenarios that involve periodic tasks
Right.
or time-sensitive calculations.
So like fast forwarding, but with more control.
Exactly.
I could see that being really helpful for testing things like caching mechanisms or rate limiters,
For sure.
where you want to make sure actions happen at the right intervals.
Absolutely. The more I work with java.util.Clock, the more I appreciate its versatility.
Yeah,
It's such a simple concept, but it has like this profound impact on how you approach testing.
it really is. It's a great example of how sometimes the smallest tools can make the biggest difference.
Definitely.
It reminds me of that saying, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world.
Haha, I love it.
Maybe a bit dramatic, but you get the idea.
I like the analogy that java.util.Clock is like that lever giving you the power to move those stubborn time-based testing problems out of your way.
So to wrap things up for our listeners, what's the one key takeaway you want them to walk away with today?
If you're working with any time-based logic in Java, do yourself a favor and embrace java.util.Clock.
Yeah.
It's a game changer for writing reliable, maintainable, and, dare I say, enjoyable tests.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's like having a secret weapon in your testing arsenal.
Absolutely.
And hey, maybe it'll even save your sanity along the way, like it did for Tomer.
I hope so. Happy coding, everyone.
All right, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into java.util. Clock. Big thanks to Tomer Ben David for his fantastic article that really sparked this conversation. We'll be sure to link to it in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.